On being on Huffington. That's
Huffington.
A major output. Yeah, that's really good. And welcome very much to Conversation. A pleasure to welcome to the program a friend of Conversations in the world, and that's Norman MacAfee. He's a poet and a writer. He had written the book The Gospel According to RFK, which had been widely distributed. He was an admirer, in the best sense of the word, of Robert Kennedy and of other progressive figures, and he's interested. He's a poet primarily, and Norman, welcome. It's so good to see you again.
So good to see you, Harold. Thank you for inviting me again.
My pleasure.
It was such a pleasure to get that phone call a couple days ago.
Well, I was so happy to see you on Huffington.
Yes.
Because we're in the election season now and things are going on. And we want to get to all of that, and we're going to show some of the books and things you published and so forth. But I wonder if maybe you could just. Let's show us
this is the new edition.
Let's do this right now. This is the book. It's got a subtitle, but it's The Gospel. If you can come in on it, Willie, please. The Gospel According to RFK, and the subtitle is
Why It Matters Now.
Why It Matters Now. This came out in when now?
Originally, it came out as a hardcover in a different version, much shorter, in 2004. And this is the 40th anniversary edition.
This very day?
40. No, it came out a month ago. But most of the publicity is centering around today, which is the day that Robert Kennedy died.
That's what
Yesterday
I meant.
He was dying, and the day before he gave his last speech, and the 4th was his last full day of life. The 5th, he was shot and spent the time in that whole day in coma. And then 2 a.m. today, he died in
40.
In the
how
hospital.
Many years ago is that now? 40.
40, exactly 40.
40 years ago.
So it's the 40th anniversary. Yes.
This 40th anniversary of the assassination in Los Angeles of Robert Kennedy, who you had a great admiration of.
Well, it's yes, I would say so. When I came to New York, in 1967, he was my senator. Vietnam was on. What was I going to do? I had college deferments, and I became a conscientious objector, and then the lottery came in, and I didn't go. Many did. I didn't agree with the war. I was very much against it. And my peers were also, and Robert Kennedy was. So I owe him in a way. And so this is my way of paying him back by focusing on his 68 campaign, which was like no other. It was short. It was 81 days.
Only 81.
Yes, and so much happened during it. The war was on. Eugene McCarthy entered, and Bobby didn't the primary, and Eugene McCarthy won New Hampshire against. Didn't win New Hampshire, but came very close against Johnson. Johnson was the president who had escalated the war from 16,000 soldiers when President Kennedy had died in 1963 to 500,000 in 1968 when Robert Kennedy had his campaign and was taking some of the blame for the war, admitting a mistake, and eloquently speaking out against the war. And when you speak out against war, and when you try to stop it, you know, and try to turn away from it, then you turn to something else, and that's everything else that makes life good, you know.
Yeah, the dogs of
health care, you know, education, joy, arts, a good life for everyone. And when you have a war, when you have a military-industrial complex, all that just goes out the window. And when Robert Kennedy was killed 4 years ago in 2 days, when he was shot, the last 40, did I say 4?
4, yeah.
I was here 4 years ago. The last barrier between us and the military-industrial complex was destroyed. Martin Luther King a month before, 2 months before, April 4th, and his brother in 1963. His brother was said at one point he wanted his epitaph to read, "He kept the peace." These are people who knew violence, the two Kennedy brothers, who knew war and didn't want any more of it. When President Kennedy was killed, Lyndon Johnson took over. Lyndon Johnson had been in the war but not seen any action. It was like a cushy thing. So he was in a way the first chicken hawk, you might say. You know, he never saw how horrible it was and experienced it himself. So that kind of person can say, okay, we're going to escalate it and kill 1 million Vietnamese in the first, before 1968.
How many in the end were there?
3 million. And 3 million Vietnamese. So Robert Kennedy is killed. Robert Kennedy was going to stop the war if he had been elected president, and he most likely would have been elected president. Yeah. Nixon became president instead. The war would have stopped with, toward the end of it, more casualties, but not a lot. But it would have been it ended in 75. Robert Kennedy is killed. Nixon becomes president the next year, and the war goes on for till 1975, 6 more years. And 2 million Vietnamese killed and 38,000 Americans killed. More.
58.
Yes, but already 20. Oh,
I see, more. Yes. I see what you mean, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So a total of 3 million Vietnamese, 58,000 or 60,000 Americans. I was thinking about the Vietnam Wall in Washington, and what are the numbers? 60,000 Americans. Well, then 60 times 5 is 300,000, times 10 is 3 million. So the Vietnam Wall for Vietnamese in Washington would have to be, oh God, I'm on TV, it's 50 times as long,
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Horrible.
So that's what happened on this day. It's been a very emotional 3 days for me. Thinking about the last 40 years.
Right. A good exercise to do.
Yes, it is. You must be sad and also happy in life. Experience all the emotions if they're genuine.
All right. Also, I maybe wonder, because I can remember seeing the movie The Fog of War with Mr. McNamara, and said, well, it was a mistake.
Yeah.
We made a mistake.
And
I've seen figures as high as 4 million. If you think of Southeast Asians.
Well,
remember the Cambodian incursion and that sort of thing?
Well, that wouldn't have happened also if Robert Kennedy had become president. You remember that Nixon and Kissinger did that monstrosity. They started bombing Cambodia, drove that country insane, if you can call a country, if you can drive it insane. It was the worst bombing in history up to that point. The worst bombing, and the Khmer Rouge, which was a small insurgency at that time, just came in and took over. And I blame Nixon and Kissinger much more than Pol Pot for the exterminations.
I do. In your heart of hearts,
of course, because they bombed Cambodia.
And then people come back, and it's like a part of history.
And they overthrew Sihanouk, who is the delightful, gentle president, Prince Sihanouk, an artist. And he kept the neutrality, and so they overthrew him and put some guy in named Lon Nol, a general.
I remember. I've forgotten.
And he was America's puppet. He was Nixon and Kissinger's puppet. And then they bombed, and the people went mad, and they all killed each other, And so I blame them much more. In fact, I was walking down the street 20 years ago or 25 years ago in Midtown Manhattan, and I saw Kissinger coming up to me, the other way, and I just sort of crashed into him, and I hit his shoulder against mine, and then kept walking. I just
that was a little payback, huh? Yeah, but it's interesting because Mr. McNamara said we made a mistake, and all those people were killed. 58,000 on our side, as many as 4 million, and nobody went in the dock.
No.
Ever.
No.
Is it a pattern? You've studied history. You got a comprehensive view, arts and all the history.
I approach it as a poet more than a scholar,
right.
so
but,
my numbers may be off a little bit sometimes.
Is it always that if you are in a position of power, over the levers of power in a society, even if you make a massive mistake such as that, that you're protected, and that if you keep power in terms of your bailiwick or where you are, you can commit murder and get away with it, and whereas somebody who did something in a fit of rage or something will be executed with great, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But if you're powerful, you're above the law, or above that law at a larger level than, let's say, the way the law is interpreted.
Well, what happened with Bush when he came in, he started abrogating treaties of long standing, and the Congress and he didn't go into the World Court. We're not in the World Court,
right.
So we can't be Milosevic. You know, we can't demand that. Well, they just got out of the court. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The courts are for the courts in terms of a prosecutorial thing are for the losers only.
That's it.
As long as you're a winner,
right?
And you
History's
start the
written
guns
by
on
the
your
winner,
side, and
and
the winners write the history.
They write the
and
laws.
That's the way it's been. And that's the way it remains.
Yes.
And it's pretty much that way, and it's pretty grim.
It's pretty grim.
James Joyce said, "History is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken." One of the great lines in poetry. It seems to me.
It is.
True. Any chance we may be on the verge of awakening, or what would awakening be?
There can be awakenings.
Is awakening a impossible dream that is better not to even be existent because it's just going to drive you crazy because it seems to be thwarted at every chance that we're going to get the planet operating in a way that is really liberating for the whole human society and what it's about? It seems to be blocked all the time by so-called practical reality. What do you think? Is there any hope for humanity to reach a liberated order rather than the history that history is only until yesterday in that
exactly
in that sense? For the rich and the powerful, they're above the law. They set the pattern, and everybody else are like serfs on a feudal estate.
Right. It's very hard.
What do you think?
It's very hard.
Any hope?
And since 1968, the gap between the rich and the poor has increased. And the gap between the powerless and the powerful has increased. The figure is 20. The average worker in a company in the 1960s made 1/20th of what the president of the company made. It's 20 to 1, and that was then. Now it's 400 to 1, and sometimes 1,000 to 1. Sometimes I think it's McDonnell Douglas, a big arms manufacturer. The CEO of that company makes 1,000 times what the grunt in Iraq makes.
Right. Yeah, like
1,000 times.
Like serfs.
The grunt is getting killed. The CEO is getting 1,000 times a year.
And getting a new yacht.
Yeah, so that has to change. And I get the figure from the Wall Street Journal. I'll never read it, but there's this senator who's being talked about as Obama's possible running mate.
Which one?
Well, there's several, but the one I like, but he probably won't be chosen, is, and that's because of some problems with feminism, and I think that that's a very important issue, is Jim Webb, and from Virginia, beat Macaca senator, beat George Allen, and he's against the war, and he's really sounded the clarion call about class inequity in a now classic op-ed in the Wall Street Journal of all places called Class Struggle.
Okay. You have class 1 or something. Right?
I have one class. Yeah, this is my. This is a very rough mock-up of my.
Thanks for that, all the work, but here.
This is a mock-up of
the cover. Is this
of the cover of what the book is. It's going to be out in the fall. And this beautiful painting is by William Allen, a friend of ours. And one day he called up 2 years ago and said, "Are you going to be home?" And he brought this. It's about this size. He uses house paint. He's a word poet. Right. And these words are all in the book. There's each 6 letters, so he chose this wonderful painting. It'll be available in the fall. The cover is different, and I just today clipped out the picture and put the
Thank you very much for doing that. It makes it that's selected poems, and that and it's one class.
One class.
Do you mean? One class.
Well,
what do you mean?
it's a selected poems, and basically, it's the idea of just not having any classes, of course. But I didn't want to say no class because then people would say, oh, he has no class. So I said
class in the sense of class warfare and class
exactly, and then finally we're just one class. We have to think of ourselves, everybody as one class.
Okay.
And
do you think Mr. Obama's trying to reach for that?
A bit, yeah. I mean, I think he's, you know, I don't want to fall in love with candidates, but if I was going to, and in fact, I'll keep my love quiet, secret. Yeah. But no, I think he's on the right track. What I love about him is two things besides his wisdom. Yeah. You know, and Toni Morrison talked about why she chose him over Clinton, and she said finally it wasn't because she was a woman. I mean, that would have been nice. I'm a woman, she said, and I'd love a woman to be president myself, me. But it was Obama's wisdom. You know, he was against the war. He read the rules of the primaries. You know, and he followed the rules. The Clintons always say, if you work hard and play by the rules, you'll get ahead in America. Well, she didn't read the rules.
And he's very savvy, and he had people around him who were savvy. Axelrod and the other fellow.
Yeah,
they're somebody who was running the campaign.
Yeah, I forget his name. Floof or something.
Floof, yeah, it's got an odd name. But they ran it classic, and they ran it very smart.
Well, the
Paid
thing
attention
is,
to the caucuses.
That's it.
That's all practical stuff.
Oh, yeah, and he attuned himself to, from his background as a community organizer. And as a constitutional scholar. These are so important right now. A community organizer, organize the communities to fight for themselves, not fight, but struggle for themselves, to get what we need.
And he's calling for a unity and that kind of thing. Above the fray, he's got class, and he's got style. And he reminds me a little bit of John Kennedy in a way. He's got that. Maybe they could bring in another, you know, era where we've got some real Ted Sorensen, some real talent and that kind of stuff, and everything make a change and everything like that. So it might be, so there's maybe a guarded optimism for
guarded, because of what happened to Bobby.
Because we were discussing before, because we're coming out of 7-8 years of Mr. Bush, and I don't know how you characterize what's been going on.
Hell. It's hell.
That's a good beginning.
Yes.
But that it's absurd. In a way, you had a bunch of lunatics take over.
It's a simulacrum, I've been calling it. It's simulacrum. It's a version of reality that has no relation to the reality that everybody else lives by.
Yeah, I was asking you whether it's theater of the absurd. You said it might be theater of cruelty.
It's theater of both.
I'm not sure who was the father of theater of the absurd.
Yeah, we were having trouble with that, Harold.
I can't remember who that was. It was
Artaud is the theater of cruelty.
And it's just absurd the way they're doing it. It was taken over. I remember back in the 70s, Wolfowitz was talking about, in the 70s, Wolfowitz was talking about invading Iraq. I mean, they've been thinking about it for a long time. It's a grand policy, and that still remains the enemy du jour, doesn't it? The Arab Islamic world is now the enemy, and they've been able to focus that hate, like out of Orwell or something. They had the hates in Orwell. On that. So we still got the problem, and we have weapon systems that apparently, if they're unleashed, could destroy our whole species. Do you ever think or contemplate that? That they have systems? I saw Ted Turner, if I may, on Charlie Rose. Charlie Rose is really tuned in and great and everything. He's really good.
Well, sometimes he's too tuned into the power structure.
Well, yeah, he's connected to that power structure and all that.
He was so empty. He was so not a help in the build-up to the war. He was just feeding the administration talking heads for the most part. There was very little with anybody, with any of the mainstream media. There was very little.
Well, that's true. But now we should say that you are now, and I want to get back to that. But you are now published on Huffington Post.
Yes.
Huffington Post is very much left. And they're very left-wing view, so you have a somewhat view of things that is not maybe necessary. You know, you've got a view of things.
But yes, I'm a leftist.
Yeah, and okay, that's fine. Ariana Stephanopoulos, is that her name?
Sassanopoulos.
Sassanopoulos, yeah. And she's become really a very major voice and everything like that. And I congratulate you on having your work published there on her site.
Well, you know,
that's this Huffington Post, I guess.
Huffington Post.
Congratulations on that. But the point I wanted to make, have I forgotten the point that I wanted to make? We were talking about. I have forgotten the point.
Well,
I'll come back to it.
Yes, let me just say,
talk a little bit about
I met you at the New School.
Right.
I live next to the New School. So every once in a while I rouse my molecules and I go down to the New School for something interesting.
Great place.
It's a great place. And I saw you at a party and I gave you, I think, a copy of the first edition of the Bobby book.
Yeah, right.
So you said, oh, come on. So we did this. I came here 4 years ago and gave an interview.
Yeah, we did a program. Yeah,
Yes.
I got to get that up on the YouTube. The YouTube's going. I remember what it was. Can I bring it up now? Is that it was he was on the Charlie Rose, and it was Ted Turner, who is a major figure, bigger than life. And Ted Turner was really in fine fettle, as they say, and the program was really very good. And Turner said he was ruminating on everything. I like him a lot in lots of ways.
Oh, he's very important.
Yeah, he's a very interesting fellow and everything like that. And did a program with him back in 1980 when he was just getting the program CNN going. But he said in there, and it was just a very thing you were talking, and he said there's only one issue. There's only one issue in terms of the human affairs. And he said it's just summed up in the fact that you were talking about Mr. Eisenhower and the industrial complex.
Exactly.
And the extension of consciousness in technological form that one side of which can be destructive. 4 million Vietnamese is a lot. But he said there's only one issue that really is there, and he said it is that with the weapon systems, we can eliminate the human species in a half an hour. The whole species. He said that's the only issue.
It is.
I mean, everything else is sort of subsumed within that. And that's why I was wondering, Sam Nunn maybe, or something who's really paid attention to that issue.
Right.
Or even if we have, and in order to deal with that, you're going to have something that's going to deal, or can we continue with an unjust system? The system, Mr. Carter said on television the other day, asked, is the system that we have by which we operate just? And he said, of course not.
No.
And we know
I agree.
that.
Yes.
You know, it's not just. It has not been ever just, really. It's all a few people run everything, and every political entity, nationally, internationally, and so forth. Intellectuals try sometimes, but they've not been able to come up with an alternative. But what is your feeling about the human condition in an existential sense? When you got weapon systems that could be set off, and you got people with narratives that they believe so fervently in, and that we cannot be trampled upon ever again, or something like that, and that could be set off, that would destroy the entire species. And yet we have a technological capability that could liberate us in a way in which there would be what they call real democracy rather than truncated, nuanced, representative democracy such as we call democracy and so forth, but real liberation of the human spirit, to be concerned with the things of the spirit and mind and so forth. There's a liberating potential, and we seem not to have the vision that's going to be able to get us through to that alternative scenario. It looks to me like they're getting ready to blow the whole planet up. I mean, do you see things that way, or they're not coming to, or is there any hope with Mr. Obama? Are we going to head that off? But they're just playing the same old games that they've been playing throughout all of history in a certain sense.
I worry very much about this next, till the election, because I think we have to warn against and fight against, struggle against an October surprise of bombing Iran.
Oh boy.
And we have to, or other kinds of phony, I mean, that's a phony war.
Like Iraq.
Iraq is a phony war.
Yeah.
And, he says, Bush says, I'm a wartime president and we're in war. And actually we've made a war in some other country. and we've made hell in another country, and we've killed 1 million people in that country. 1 million people, according to Johns Hopkins and Lancet.
That's Johns Hopkins and Lancet, yeah. A
million.
And, 1 million.
1 million.
That's a lot of human beings.
Of course.
They have died. Some of them have died at their own hands, fighting one another.
It's as bad as Vietnam, because Vietnam was 3 million, we'll say, maybe more, and that was a 75 million person country. Iraq is 25 million. So it's the same ratio. And it's just that...
Is that that's true, right?
Yeah, Iraq was 24 million, I think, and now 1 million have been killed. That's a fourth.
Do you trust the Lancet figures? Or, because the Bush administration...
the Bush administration just doesn't say anything, because it's not their job to... You know, they say, we count our dead, but it's up to them to count their dead.
Yeah, well, they don't pay any attention to the dead of the other. It's a white man's idea about these people that are expendable.
I think they wanted to create chaos.
Yeah.
And I think that they've won in that sense. They've created chaos. I think they wanted to control the oil.
Yeah.
I think they wanted the price of oil to go up 400%, which is what happened, because then they make huge profits. So I think they've won, even though everybody says, oh, he's such a dope. You know, how could he make so many mistakes? But the idea is to just foment chaos.
I guess I'm wondering, is it just he? I mean, we
should
put too much
it's a whole bunch of people.
Upon, or is it the system? And is the system adequate to what the future requires?
Well, this is
in terms of a qualitative trend. The poets have been trying to tell us things that the politicals never listen to, it seems. They just gather more power, and it's been going on forever, and there's always been a few run everything, and everybody else are like serfs.
Well, there are
still like that.
There are models that we could maybe talk about, small communities, religions like the Quakers, who believe that everything is sacred, and our peace, the peace religion. There are. What about the New England town meetings?
Owens or something.
And then of course they're communes, and they're again. Obama is very different from everybody else.
I think he's trying to rise to a higher.
And one of the reasons is he came from Harvard. He could have had a job on the board of Walmart, as he said.
That's what you go to Harvard for, don't you? Make all those connections.
He said to Hillary in one of the debates, "Well, you were on the board of Walmart, and I was a community organizer." He went right into helping people.
I know.
But also in a real way, being skills of how to organize a community to get things done. And that's what we need. And it's the community of nations.
That's what we need.
We need a community organizer who can organize the community of nations again.
The people, maybe. You could call the community of nations the people.
And this is what's so important about today, because Robert Kennedy died, and we weren't organized as a people to take up the mantle, cut it into 1 million pieces, and carry it with us. We just went into a deep funk. The people who liked him, who loved him, who didn't care, everybody, the country went into a kind of depression. And there wasn't a sense that you'd be able to organize. And if Obama becomes president, I think, and already, his campaign is just brilliant because of all the people who are in the campaign. They know how to raise money, they know how to organize, they know how to get people on their side, and their side is a good side. It's the side that was against the war. It's the side that's for a fairer shake for people.
Let's hope that's
it's still a crazy world, but he can't do everything. So what we learned from Robert Kennedy's death. He was a wonderful human being, and he became much better as time went on.
He did.
But we didn't,
He wasn't 1,000%.
I mean, I've had a great life.
He was against, he did some things in the early career that were a little tricky.
He was quite young when he died,
Yeah, that's
right. 43.
Only 43. He was only 43 when he died. I didn't realize that. I know it was about the same time that he died that Mr. Johnson, who had been pursuing that war in 1968 and came out and said he wasn't going to run again. and all hell broke loose and everything because they still had, as you say, that's 68, and we still had 7 years before we're going to get out of there. Like they're trying to,
McBush.
No, not McBush. I mean, McCain is saying he made a slip of the tongue and said we're going to be there 100 years, you know, in there, and that's like imperialism, and that boot of imperialism, the white man's burden, that kind of stuff resonates. I think maybe Obama, if he becomes president, the implications in terms of the masses of the people of the world might be more important than anything else to try and muster something from the people themselves rather than the people who are all vested within the system in place, which overwhelmingly benefits those who are already well ensconced within that system, like feudal lords within a feudal estate. They had the right powdered wigs and that sort of thing for the Angevin regime they represented, and the people were starving, but then the people became involved. Are you optimistic about the trend of history? Are things getting better? Or what do you think in terms of that? Back again against this template that we can now destroy at the behest of one person setting it off, the whole species. Couldn't do it in the Second World War. Right?
Well, we did toward the end.
We were
hydrogen.
impotent.
Yes.
No, we were impotent. We didn't have that capability.
Right.
Do you understand the difference?
Oh, of course.
Because it went all through. You get the bow and arrow, and then you get the spear, and then you get the the gun, and then you get the Gatling gun, and then you get the dreadnought, and then you get the tank, and then you get and it finally gets to the point where apparently it's modeled only, of course, because there are weapon systems beyond even those we know.
Sure.
Plus the germ warfare, that if we unleash like a spasm of hatred and that kind of thing, like we've been doing regularly throughout our history as a species, it would mean the end of our species.
I think
there's something existentially new.
I've been thinking that my villain is the military-industrial complex,
well,
and actually I called it the military-industrial legislative complex.
Academic, perhaps.
Could be entertainment.
The whole ball of wax.
Yeah, but originally it was that, and that was a brilliant insight. And but you look at the terms, and we have military, of course, industrial. Okay, industrial revolution.
What about the post-industrial?
No, the industrial revolution. Start there, and that's where it all began. That's where all the ability to mass produce and mass exterminate began.
Wait a minute, mass produce, and
mass exterminate, because then you can have weapons of mass destruction. It's you can manufacture them on a large scale. Industrial revolution.
I think at the beginning,
and then you have corporatism today, corporate capitalism.
Yeah.
And
some
that's
people
fascism.
Those as fascism.
Sure, it is. It is. It is. My book.
No, but wait a minute. The thing.
My little book, The Coming of Fascism to America.
Right. Very apropos. Here's another booklet that he's got out now.
2 years ago. It's going to be, that'll be published in one class.
Come in tight on the book. Show the title and everything. And so this is.
That's from the Bowery Poetry Club. And,
God, it's a great place.
Great place. Great place.
No, could you
Bob
come
Holman.
in and hold it for a minute? There. Okay, good. Coming of Fascism to America by our guest, Norman MacAfee. That's a Scottish name.
Scottish name. And you pronounce the clan right. It's the MacAfee clan.
Yeah, well, I come out of the Gregg clan. I mean,
I don't think we're clan enemies, but
no, not. I mean,
if you were a McDonald, I think we'd have to duke it out.
But anyway, I mentioned to you, and it's kind of apropos, maybe what I'm thinking about. If I mentioned to you this book by the fellow Ed Herman, who wrote the book, and he called it, and he said, "How the Scots."
Yes.
That's us. Invented the modern world and everything in it. It sounds ludicrous, but he's a serious historian, and he said the modern world, for when we think of modernism, you say industrial, the industrialization was coming out of an agricultural feudal thing. Probably 1776 is a big year, not only for our revolution, publication of The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, the steam engine, Hume, and that informed the American experiment across the ocean that started the United States of America, that in turn informed Les Miserables of France with this idea of democracy or that. So the modern world and the major institutional assumptions of the modern world was invented primarily by the Scots, even more than the French Enlightenment. It was the Scottish Enlightenment and that. And so if you want somebody to blame for the modern world, it's the Scots. You got to find out who to blame. I guess it's us.
Yeah,
it's us, the Scots, and our predecessors, right?
Oh, dear.
They're
We're
the
to
ones
blame,
who set
Harold.
it all up. And, you know, that's what I'm saying. I hate to call that to your attention, but I think there's something to be said for that, because the principles of capitalism, the principles of capital formation, industrialization, mass production, all of these things that we've been going through and bringing such difficulty to, and then we had Lord Keynes and all that sort of thing, and we get to a point where, but maybe not, and so we're, that capability is now so destructive, which used to be the way to, I know, at the beginning of the 19th century, let me think, no, beginning of the 20th century, 19th transfer, I think the casualty rates within what we call war, it was something like there were 10 civilians for every 9 soldiers in the meadow fighting. By the end of the century, it was 9 civilians for every 10 military. It has shifted. And they will bomb and kill civilians now, firebomb Dresden, this kind of thing. And it's shifted, the nature of the thing is shifted. And
it's the
so
Hiroshima
forth.
precedent, I call
Well,
it.
the Hiroshima, but the
It could be the
firebombing,
Dresden precedent also.
the firebombing of Tokyo killed more than the Hiroshima bomb. It was firebombing, and we firebombed Dresden. And we did that, and we were trying to kill each other as best we could. We were trying to kill them. They were intolerable. We're intolerable. That kind of thing. But we were impotent.
Yes.
We didn't have the capability to destroy the whole species. I don't even know if that's the case for sure, but the modeling seems to tell us that. That's something new in the culmination of this whole period. And then what we ought to look at once in a while is the possibility of liberation from the nightmare of history. Only our poets call for it, and our politicians just reify the power of the already powerful in every political entity and in the international sphere. And the people really don't count except something to be led around in a ad campaign called an election, where they get to choose which of the leaders are able to lead them around with a coercion and by co-option. So we need something better than that, something, major transformation. Do you see it in the wind, or do you think that's the case? We can just muddle through with the systems we've inherited out of history, or do we need qualitative transformation?
Right, we've muddled through, but it's such a cliche. I woke up to the alarm radio, and I learned on NPR that the world was coming to an end recently. My opera, I wrote an opera called The Death of the Forest.
Yes, let's show. That's why you got your site.
But you can't really see it. It's not the best title.
No, it's not. The Death of the Forest. That's why your website says Forest. This is an opera you put together.
It's an opera using the music of Charles Ives.
Oh, yeah, great.
And it's about an Indian war in New England, and we're now... It's now at the City Opera and at Glimmerglass being looked at, and we hope it gets done there, because it's great music. It's a great story of the two sides. And you know, I'm an artist, so I don't. My sympathies are with the Indians, but
yes, of course.
I have a heroine who is Mary Rowlandson. She was taken captive, and she wrote the first American bestseller, and she's a great sympathetic character.
This in the play?
In the opera, real character, opera. And the hero is Metacomet, who almost defeated the English. He's a great moral hero. He says at one point, "You should do to us as we did to you when we were stronger than you." He says that. So when they were, when the English first came. Exactly. This is New England.
Could have wiped them out, maybe. Then.
But he didn't. They didn't, because they were, they were humans. Yeah. And I was talking to our friend
George,
Willie? George, and
Josh.
Everybody's great.
Control them. They're all great guys. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And George was reading the script.
You got to be in touch.
And then I realized that. This is 1676, 1675. It's the 1600s, and my clan, the MacAfees, also experienced the same thing in the Hebrides. We were the keepers of of the records in a little island called Colonsay in the Hebrides.
Really?
I say little, but it's the same size as Manhattan,
Yeah.
but there are only 100 people on it.
Yes, right. Same thing happened to me. I had a great.
And the MacFees were our leader, our chieftain Malcolm, was killed by the MacDonalds and the clan warfare, and Metacomet, the hero of my opera, was killed by the English, by imperialism, by some group stronger than ours. And in 1623, Malcolm was killed, and our clan was what's called broken because we didn't lay hands on the successor. So it became a broken, dispersed clan. And the same thing happened. I just realized I was talking with George. This is wonderful. The same thing happened tragically with the Wampanoags in this opera. They're defeated. Metacomet's son Metom is sold into slavery in the West Indies, 1676. The clan is the tribe is broken, and my clan and the Wampanoags were reestablished in about 1980, each of us.
Oh, I see.
In America, the Wampanoags, and in Scotland, the MacFees. And MacFee means the people of ancient knowledge. We were the record keepers.
Record keepers.
So as a writer, it means everything to me.
And
I didn't go through life knowing that. I only learned that maybe 5 years ago.
Isn't it
and it just
you
conferred such.
Well, that's really. I know your
me.
site reflects force because that's your thing. That's great. And then you're putting all this stuff on Huffington. One of the problems is there's too much interesting stuff to talk about. I'm off on tangents and so forth. But I mean, you read before. We've got a piece of tape that we might be able to show. And you have you have this great admiration of Mr. Kennedy. He had great Robert Kennedy, and he had a great feeling for the least advantaged and so forth, even though he came from privilege. But maybe we have that, and you could set it up. You did a reading. We want to get that in.
He was going to be 40. He was going to be 80 years old on November 20th, I think it was, 2005.
He would have been had
he would have
lived.
been, and I was invited because of the book.
Yeah,
to the Senate by the Robert Kennedy Memorial Foundation, which is a human rights organization that fights for human rights around the world. And Obama was invited. He was in the morning. I didn't meet him. I haven't met him yet. Kerry spoke. Clinton spoke. Ted Kennedy spoke. He introduced everyone. So I met them all. And then I was asked to speak, and Ed Markey introduced me.
Ed Markey's a great guy.
And I did a little speech before, and then I read a poem because Robert Kennedy loved poetry.
Yeah, he did.
And I'd written a poem the night before. And the poem will be in this one class. It'll be the last poem.
It's the one.
The one class is poems from 1965 to 2005, and this poem will be the last
poem. And we have it on tape, right?
We have it on tape.
C-SPAN did it. And so what, it goes about 5 minutes?
No, just two minutes. 2.5 minutes.
So we've got that. Let's set that up. We're talking with Norman MacFee, and he's written this thing, and he's got some footage from when he read that. So let's set that up and run that now, then, please, if you could. So now if they can get it to go, it'll go right. It'll come in, and sometimes it's hard to get the button going and everything like that. But
it was a very tough time because it was 2005. The election of 2006 had not happened, so it was a very Republican town still. And people were still...
Yeah, people were still flag waving.
So the first line in the poem is, I write this in Bush's America of torturing, Bush lying us to war, Bush. Everyone's going, oh... They were
here we go. They got it. If we could bring the sound in here, please, too.
For Robert Kennedy's 80th birthday at the Capitol, November 16th, 2005. I write this in Bush's America of torturers, Bush lying us to war, Bush laughing at the gap between the rich and poor increasing. No one knows what you would be like today. I am not a mathematician, so cannot cite equations that would bring you to 80 and tell us what you and the world would be like had you lived. Thanksgiving, 1967. I came to New York alone to live my life with you as my senator, and I hoped my president. June 1968. I had no TV. I was writing poetry about Vietnam. Went to bed for a restless night, dreaming of anguished voices in subway tunnels beneath Astro Place, and woke to a beautiful morning, and moaning in the streets and shops, you were dying. The line was a mile long for your St. Pat's Requiem. In an East Village room that fall, I wrote the words, nostalgia for the future, not quite realizing they were for you. Your words and thoughts that year kept you alive these years. You became the president of the other America that we have carried around 37 years. You became the president of the America that we salute today, where everyone has a job and some hope. That's a quote from him. Where there is but one class, where we honor the arts of mercy, pity, peace, and love. Peace to you, warring soul, with your delicate anger. Peace to our bloody world. Thank you.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good. You got that. That's where you got the thing, one class. Maybe.
Well, no,
that was
I've
from
been
Kennedy?
thinking about that before, but
Before Kennedy said it?
No, I said it. Actually, I said one class. He didn't say one class.
Oh, he did not.
No.
I thought we were quoting him.
He said where everybody has a job and some hope. That's what he said.
Yeah, okay.
And then where we are, but one class. That's me.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And that's sort of my thing, I guess.
You don't want
Military-industrial complex and a classless society.
But you want a classless society?
Yeah, basically.
You don't. Okay.
I don't think we need that.
Yeah, you don't think we need. Okay.
Nonsense. I mean, with something to work towards.
Well, if you were to take as the criteria of human existence is who can hit a ball through the air and put it in a cup soon, you would have somebody like Tiger Woods. Mm-hmm. Now, do you want everyone to play just mediocre, or do you want room for the stars? Mm-hmm. Do you want Michelangelo? He stood out. You know, the great artists stand out. You don't want them to be any standout. You want everyone to be just blandly the same.
No, I want everybody to have.
That's what they would say. You understand?
I want everybody to have a chance to be a Tiger Woods or a Michelangelo in their own ways, in their own fields.
But you're already differentiating some from the others.
Oh, absolutely.
You want to make that. We have to make that clear. What we mean that there are differences within that, but it's a matter of opportunity.
Everyone is different.
Realized or not realized.
Has to have the
there's
same,
100 trillion cells. Do you know that?
Chance.
Do you know that, Norman? There's 100 trillion cells in a human organism. 100 trillion.
I knew
they
that.
all
I thought
count.
It was 100 trillion and one.
No. 100. No.
Damn.
Two.
Yes.
Two. No, literally, that's about it. And they all matter.
Yes.
But they are differentiated. Some are different than others, right? You know, but there's different. So you got to have differentiation and individualization and so forth, rather than just having everything all the same. Okay.
Oh.
We're gonna have to close it out again. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to see. That's.
Oh.
Okay, it looks like we're going to have to close it out again because we're running short on time, unfortunately. But it's really been it's been really good talking to you. I really appreciate you coming in and all this good work that you've been doing.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you for appreciating
congratulations on all the work.
And your good work, too.
Well, that's heartfelt on my part. That's really good.
I was thinking Bucky Fuller and Ramsey Clark and all these great people, and Judith Molina. And
Judith Molina, I'm really sorry to hear about Hannah.
I'm so sorry, too.
Hannon passed. That was too sad. I mean, he's only a young...
59, 58.
Yeah, really. It's really sad. Well,
he worked very hard.
Yes, he did. He was wonderful. We redid a program with them, a while back.
I did a reading with them once.
Yeah.
At the Museum of Modern Art, and I was just thrilled. And I went to Julian's funeral. And wept.
Oh, you
because,
did?
Yes, I did.
You knew Julian then?
Not well, but well enough. and I always admired their work.
Yeah, it's great. The theater and the people coming out of the arts are really important in that. And you're in that venue, so you know well. And that's where somebody said the artists are the antenna of the race, and you're doing a great job in fulfilling that role.
Thank you.
So thank you really very much. So good to talk. Sorry we have to run this a little bit short. Yeah, it's too bad. Yeah, I know. We could have talked all night. We could have talked all night, yeah, as they say. But it's your pleasure, then, to have the perceptions, then, of Norman McPhee. And he's author, as you can see, of the book on RFK, which is really good. And other works, and it still continues, and it's
beautiful, beautiful quote. Together we can make ourselves a nation that spends more on books than on bombs, more on hospitals than the terrible tools of war, more on decent houses than military aircraft.
Okay, and that might apply not only to this country, but to the world, one would think.